Welcome to Monday Mindshare. Today we have one of the SFuels endure.iq purpose ambassadors, and he has one heck of a story to tell. And today we're going to give him that platform to share a lot of what he has been through and how he is looking at the future. Hey there, Coach Aaron here, host of SFuels Monday Mindshare, where we bring endurance and nutrition together to help you go longer. So in today's episode, I have one of our infamous athletes from the SFuels endure.iq and purpose ambassador race team. Today we have Dan Wilson. Dan, welcome to the episode.
Thanks for having me. I've been watching these for months, waiting for my shot, and here we are.
Well, there we go. I have to tell Leighton that you probably started to tune in when I took the hosting of this.
I definitely took it up a notch. That's for absolute sure.
Well, I'll go ahead and pat myself on the back off screen. But Dan, I know we got to get introduced at the Ironman World Championships in St. George this past year, and you have one heck of a story, and I am really excited to bring you onto the episode today to kind of talk about some of the life changes that you've gone through, and really where you've started and where you're at today, and then also where the future, or what the future has to hold for you. So I guess the first question, Dan, is who is Dan Wilson?
Yeah, so it's been quite the process. So in terms of the athletic endeavor, so me, I grew up in Michigan. Mostly the only thing I did as sport was Little League baseball. So I would never really consider myself an athlete. Got married young, high school sweetheart, and had a kid, and the never really learned how to address nutrition. So being overweight and having lots of issues is something that just more or less ran in my family, and I fell into that rut in 2007. Topped out at about 285 pounds, which is 100 pounds more than I am today. At least my racing weight would go up and down a little bit in between races. But at that point, I looked in the mirror, and I had a 3-year-old son, and had some challenges with my marriage at the time, and we've moved on from that as well. And I looked at my son, and I just thought, this isn't good for me. This isn't good for him. This isn't working. So we decided to flip the card table over and start over, and started that journey. Went to the gym, started going down that process, went into the pretty typical way of American dieting, which was low fat, but also really was specifically focused on low sugar, no alcohol. So at least I was doing part of that right. Was able to significantly reduce quite a bit. Initially, I think it was 60 pounds in 6 months or so. And then the other 40 took me about 4 years. So, that's pretty typical part of that process. So that was 2007, and got into more sport like this in terms of endurance sports, endurance cycling in 2010 with my now wife. They would do multi-day cycling tours throughout Michigan. We would raise money for the Make-A-Wish Foundation, for instance. We would do a 3-day, 300-mile bike tour through the entire state, basically. So 2010, jumped in head first into the deep end. I think that I did the 1-day ride across Michigan with another teammate, and that was 149 miles in a day on a bicycle, which was amazing, and I was hooked. And
that's awesome. And I guess you were almost about ready to lead into it. When did the transition go from cycling an endurance event to that endurance event being Ironman events?
Yeah, Ironman wasn't even part of the thought process. I mean, at that point, I don't know that I had ever swam more than a length of a pool. I mean, I could not drown, but I never really learned how to swim. I still don't like being in bodies of water where I can't see or understand what's beneath me. So I don't like lakes.
Yeah.
But I've swam across many of them. in terms of sport. Yeah, so what happened was one of my neighbors who was a former Division III football offensive lineman, so about a 6'7", 285-pound guy. He came out one day as we were watching the kids play in the street in the neighborhood, and he's like, I've had this thing on my bucket list for so many years. I'm going to do a triathlon. And of course, I'm thinking, what, like the Hawaii one? Because that's what everybody thinks immediately. And he's like, no, there's this thing called a sprint triathlon, and I'm like, yeah, I'll do it with you. I don't know how to swim and I don't know how to run. I don't like running. I mean, I don't know that I ran more than a mile unless someone was chasing me or I had to in school. And that day I signed up for the race. He didn't actually sign up, so that's another kind of funny part of that story. But I signed up for a race 5 months out and started the process. And very similar to cycling, I was almost immediately hooked with just the discipline and the rigor. And I was tracking a lot of my stats, and I was seeing progress every single week. So I mean, it literally started with, there was a 1/10 of a mile track at our gym upstairs, and it was jog one, walk one, jog one. That's how the process started. I hated treadmills. I didn't have a bike trainer. I had a bike, but not a trainer. But I'll tell you, and they also had a 25-yard pool there, which was very strange to watch a YouTube video and then go practice like pushing off the side of a pool and not sucking in a bunch of water, right? So the whole thing was literally iterative like that. And I ended up doing that race. I look back now at what I was wearing and the kit I had and all of this setup. I've been looking at the pictures of that race, and I laugh at myself because it looked ridiculous, but I did it. I finished it, and yeah, that was the very beginning of the journey. Just a normal sprint triathlon in the spring. I did I think 3 more sprints that year. The next year I did 2 sprints and 3 Olympics. The next year was 2 Olympics and a 70.3 at the end of the year. And at that 70.3, I got some really, really wise advice from a leader that I had at the time that was an ultra marathon runner. And he said, 12 and a half miles into that run, which ironically ended up being when I was passing a cemetery on the side of the road. He's like, just stop and think about your situation. Because he kind of knew when I was going to the 70.3 level that there was a potential for me to go beyond that. And he said, if you feel like this is the worst thing you've ever done in your life and you never, ever, ever want to do it again, that's one path. But if you recognize at that moment that you still have anything left in the tank, that's your next path. He says, I think it's going to be the latter because I know you, but if it's the former, that's fine. At least you've been able to assess and make that decision. And that stood with me the whole time. I think that first race was like 6:18 or something for a half distance. It was the longest swim I've ever done in open water. The bike I've done longer, but not in a race format.
Right.
And was the second or third half marathon I'd run. And it, like, I'm running down the road and I see the cemetery at the side of the road, and I'm like, all right, 12 miles. And like immediately I can hear his voice in my head. And so I stopped. And then I'm like, all right, where are we at? Trying to kind of check myself. And
right.
And of course it was like, damn, because I had gas left in the tank. And I was like, all right, I guess we're going to see where we go from here. And I finished that race. And the next year, the plan was to do 3 70.3s because the way that they were scheduled in Michigan, there was a kickoff the season, a mid-season, and a late season race.
Nice.
And schedule would come out in December. And I checked the schedule when it came out, and the first 2 races I was going to do were canceled. They had moved them because they didn't get the permits to hold them at the place that they were holding them. And So of course I'm sitting here disappointed, and then this email comes in from what was then Rev 3, who had a full distance race, a family friendly full distance race at Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio, which was a 2-hour drive from us, and for the 20% off discount. And so I looked at my
calling your
wife.
name, right?
I looked at my wife and I'm like, okay, there's definitely something here. And she's like, well, you're going to do this anyway, so you might as well just sign up for it. And so I did, and I did the 70.3 in the mid season and the full that year, and it was amazing. It was tough. It was an emotional experience. I think there were 3 or 4 moments in that race where you kind of have that either my body's gonna shut down on me, or you kind of get the Mario Brothers with the mushroom leveling up process. And mile 16 into that run, I think, although I haven't witnessed it ever since, I think I got the infamous the runner's high, because the last 10 miles of that full marathon, which is the longest I had ever run in my entire life. So I went into that race only ever running 14 and a half miles in a go.
Mm-hmm.
And many people told me I was crazy for not doing that, but I didn't have the ability to withstand the wear and tear, and still keep training, right? Because it would have set me back. And the last 10 miles of that course was the fastest 10 miles I'd ever run to date. So it was literally like a leveling up process. My wife and her sister were there, and they saw me because it was a 2-loop run,
Mm-hmm.
saw me at the turnaround, and they decided they were going to have to come out to help get me through. So they left and went back downtown, and they saw me come through with like this look on my face, like, this is the most amazing thing ever. And they're like, we didn't know where you went, but that wasn't you. And it was just one of those things. And I've been chasing that feeling ever since. I've been through some tough times and tough situations. Haven't found that yet, but I'm going to keep looking for it. But yeah, I mean, that race was remarkable for so many reasons. I mean, it was one of those things where, similar to the first 70.3, when I could see the finish line, I can hear the finish line, because we ran basically over the causeway into Cedar Point, which is on an island, a peninsula. And I got to the ticket booth where they take the money for the parking. And again, I stopped. And I just kind of looked around, and I'm thinking, this is actually happening,
Yeah.
and had a emotional moment, and took off, and kind of slogged through the parking lot, and at the beginning of the finishing chute, I had both my kids with me, and so they allowed us to have your family. And there were some people that, I think the person that finished right after me had like 45 people in his entourage, all coming down the finishing chute at the same time. But yeah, I grabbed my 2 kids, and they took off like a bat out of hell. And I'm like, I can't move that fast. So yeah, we got up and crossed the finish line, and I went to lean over to take a picture with them, and I fell to my knees. And the picture was phenomenal. Like, they've got a really amazing finish line, and I'm on my knees, big smile on my face, the therapy smile they teach you how to put on when you cross the finish line in those conditions. And I remember I couldn't get up. But that was the start of the process. And since then it's been a slog since, but it's been amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Awesome. And that being the first, what year was that first full distance took place?
That was 2013. So
okay.
Yep.
And since 2013, you have now completed how many full distance Ironman?
15 total, 140.6 races. In the flesh, or in person, I've done. I did the 2020. Yeah, I did the Ironman VR full in my garage, which I have an amazing setup in my garage. But it's been 15 total. 13 of those WTC branded races. 2 of them. One was the Rev 3 Cedar Point. The following year, I did Ironman Florida, which was a weather absolute hot mess. Went back to Cedar Point the next year when Rev 3 and Challenge got together. Mother Nature decided to completely destroy the entire transition zone and set up the night before. They had like a microburst hit. So the finish line they had then was half of what they had the year before. It was kind of makeshift at that point because it got destroyed the day before. And everything else since has been, that's when I learned about the legacy program. So everything else has been more or less full distance Ironman races, trying to get closer to that legacy slot.
Well, and really we had talked about that before we got on air, and that's kind of the latest big news that has come down the pike for you as an athlete. Yeah. So I'm gonna let you go ahead and share that news to the world.
Yeah, so I did get my Kona slot for 2023. We are in fact racing. They got the email that came out I think yesterday that confirmed they're going to do another 2-day race format like they are doing this fall. So I'll be racing on October 14th, 2023 in Kona, Hawaii. So
you probably, I'm sure you probably still can't say that without getting some goosebumps on the arms and the legs.
No, I can't. I mean, once I became fully invested in this in 2013, paying attention and watching the Breakfast with Bob's and all the other stuff going on, just hearing people talk about their experience on that island, being somewhat out of body, somewhat of even a kind of like a religious experience for many of them. You get on the island and you feel like a comforting, like the island embraces you, and of course it has its conditions and everything, and that's been something that I've been really looking forward to for so many years. It was in 2018 when I really started thinking about how long it was going to take me to get that slot, and the fact that I didn't want to wait so long, especially with 3 kids, for them to be grown by the time I was able to get there. So I started doing 2 races a year. 2018, I moved from Michigan down here to Florida, which gave us essentially 2 seasons, with the heat of the summer kind of being the off season versus the opposite. So I started doing a spring and a fall full distance, and then 2020 was going to be the year. I had 2 races in the spring, 5 weeks apart, which to me is absolutely perfect for not having to deal with the down and then coming back up with a major build, but not too close that you're going to wreck yourself. So 2 in the spring and 2 in the fall, and we all know what happened in 2020. I ended up getting 1 in the fall, which was the only, I think, Ironman race. Yeah, the Florida, which was odd. It was like racing in a ghost town.
Oh, I can believe it, and especially with all the different COVID restrictions that they had around it. It was probably, you've talked about several of the races having a unique experience, and that was just another one to add to the list.
It was, but I'll tell you, it was the Chris Nikic year, and that he stole the show. I mean, I saw him several times on the bike and on the run. Early part of the run, he had like an entire film crew following him because they were shooting this for his documentary, and just seeing him out there was inspiring. I hear people talk about us being inspiring just by the sheer amount of stuff that we can do, but I mean that's inspiration.
Absolutely.
But so that was that year, and then everything got deferred to the following year. So here we go into 2021. I'm thinking I'm going to do 3 races. So the Ironman Texas in the spring, which got pushed to Ironman Texas of this year.
Yep.
Actually, it originally got pushed to the fall and then got repushed to Ironman Texas of 2021. They pushed that to October because they couldn't, or they wouldn't undo the emergency status and the county that the toll road is on. So it was more or less a political issue that stopped them from hosting the race then. So they moved it to October. What was supposed to be Tulsa in 2020 I ended up transferring it to Maryland, which was supposed to be in the fall of 2020, ended up getting pushed to 2021. And then I I had moved one of the other races out, Chattanooga of 2020. That got moved as well. So guess what? Fall of 21 rolls around, and I'm looking at 3 iron distance races in 21 days. Saturday, the following Sunday, and then 2 Saturdays later. So Ironman Maryland, Ironman Chattanooga, and then Ironman Texas, not Waco, because then the week after they had the Waco one. Every one of these has been absolutely freaking unique. I've done 2019 Florida, which was the year that Hurricane Michael hit and destroyed the Panhandle. So that's the only Ironman Florida in this that's been out of Panama City. They held it in Haines City that year. 2.4 mile swim in an inland lake in Florida is an adventure, to say the least. Remember how I talked about I don't like the fact that I don't swimming.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my mentality going into that race was don't be first, don't be last, don't be lunch. Yeah, but yeah, so that was the journey going into 2021, and fortunately, about 2018 is when I started learning around low carb, high fat, which was massive in terms of helping me recover from the training. I've done some races when we used to have the post race massage, and the person's like, "You don't even feel like you did a race today." I'm like, I'm okay. I mean, I'll feel it in 24 hours, but as of right now, I'm okay. I mean, the amount of inflammation you don't end up having because of this lifestyle has been phenomenal. And I'll tell you, there's no way in heck you do 3 Ironman races in 21 days unless your name's James Lawrence.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and especially with the toll that it just takes on your body and adds up, if you don't have that same inflammation or inflammatory response.
Yeah.
It's so. Give me a little. How did you go about learning the low carb, healthy fat lifestyle?
Yeah.
And how long did it take you to kind of feel comfortable within that kind of process?
Yeah, so my wife had started doing. She had a keto challenge at her gym earlier that year, and of course, everything she was doing was completely contrary to anything we'd ever been taught.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm kind of poking at, this. Of course, you're going to have heart problems and everything else that everyone else says. She was doing it just following what someone else was saying. But when I started actually digging into the research behind it, I found a lot of really good material, and and I learned why it works, and whether you like him or not. I mean, Professor Noakes is someone who, I saw quite a bit of what he had put out there, and it was I don't know if it was in and around that time when Dan started putting material out.
Mm-hmm.
But learning what he and the prof were also talking about, and it made sense. I mean, because just about every other race that I had done prior, I ran into the gut rot issue. I mean, it's my body can't process especially high fructose corn syrup very well, and that was one of the reasons I was so heavy. I didn't even talk about the indigestion and acid reflux that I had for so many years that just disappeared as soon as I stopped consuming that garbage, especially high fructose. And whenever we have some sort of an event, and I kind of have to consume things to just be part of the event, and I pay for that.
And I think all of us that lead to that lifestyle kind of have probably been in a situation where either there's nothing else to offer or whatnot, and we've been in a situation of emergency in that case, and we have to consume it. And next thing you know, that was a terrible decision.
Yeah, I mean, you pay for it. Whether you get indigestion, you have stomach issues. I mean, yeah, your body knows that it's got something foreign in it that shouldn't be there, although you were putting it there for so many years. So it's I started that in 2018-ish. Did a couple of races. That year was Texas and Florida. The Florida race was one of the best races I'd ever actually. It was 2018. That was one of the best races I've had, in terms of weather conditions were absolutely perfect that day, though. I think it maxed out at about 70 degrees, cloudy, very little wind. So great conditions for what I needed. But yeah.
Well, and that really, when I have athletes race the first time in the lifestyle, and when we have the nutrition dialed in on race day,
Yeah.
it's one of those situations where either the light bulb pops on or the confidence goes through the roof. And really, from that particular aspect, it's the fuel head, or the flame has been fired at that point, and it's really more of the same. And as you've probably realized, Dan, through the course of the consistency of the diet, year after year, you return benefits to yourself.
Oh yeah.
By the lifestyle and by the diet itself. So I have to believe that since 2018, there's a good reason why you've kind of stuck to the lifestyle and to the diet, right?
Yeah, I mean, and we don't even have to talk about the white elephant in the room, which is COVID. I mean, it's an inflammatory disease. I mean, the effect that it has in the body is all based on that. So, I mean, I've had family members, dementia and Alzheimer's and all of these diseases that were really heavily pointing more towards that, the inflammatory, the constant state of chronic inflammation. And I always had problems with, joint pain and this, that, and the other thing. And yeah, it's been great. Like I said, I mean, I could feel it when you fall off the wagon, and it's not because you hurt your hip. It's because you end up with that joint pain. You mistakenly eat something that's baked in the wrong kind of oil or in the wrong kind of oil, and it's like you just feel like crap.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, it's been absolutely amazing to go through this process, specifically with this sport lifestyle. I'm the kind of person that if I'm not doing something active on a daily basis, I go crazy. I mean, I've got a pretty high stress job. I work in IT, so that's been pretty stressful. I carry now I do most of IT advisory, but I carry our clients' concerns on my shoulders, and I take on a lot because I like to stay busy and I like to help. But yeah, I mean, it's just a situation where the lifestyle of Ironman in general is something that works very, very well for me. The community is great. Being able to interact with you guys and that has been absolutely amazing. But yeah, the dietary piece is just lend itself very, very well. And I continue to hear stories. I mean, think about the Lionel Sanders issue last spring. Was it Coeur d'Alene, right? He said it right out. He's like, yeah, about 6.5 hours into the race, I couldn't do anything else. And I'm like, yeah, go read Dan's note on his research on exactly what happens about 6 to 7 hours into the race. That's when your body can no longer process the stuff that you're shoving into it. But you still end up running into issues with just the mass media and all the other pundits that really don't necessarily know what they're talking about. But yeah, I mean, we're living proof that it works.
Absolutely. And sometimes a lot of that quality research gets lost in translation because there's not as much money in the process. So yep. It's really fascinating when you actually dive into the science component of it and allow that to be your guidance. And that kind of leads me into, as far as let's say the train and the race product from SFuels, how, especially with the addition in the last really about 9 months, I guess, at this point, of the Race Plus gel as well.
Yeah.
How are you incorporating those into your race strategy, your training strategy to kind of maintain your current lifestyle as well?
Yeah, I'm still trying to dial in exactly what I need in given conditions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not built to be able to go out on the weekend and do 7.5 hours of training to figure out where that line is. If I do, the quality of training I'm going to have for the next week is going to be disrupted by that. And when I started with SFuels, it was really just when I think the only product we had at the time was Train.
Mm-hmm.
So we were trying to figure out how to supplement that with carbs, and I made a really big rookie mistake trying to go into an Ironman without anything other than Train. And I was thinking like, well, it's just one scoop an hour, and I would put it in my, and this was I think it was Ironman Texas that year, and like 80 miles into the bike, I'm yawning and I've got no energy whatsoever. I essentially bonked at 80 miles into the bike. And I'm continuing to work with Leighton and the team and see the other thing that came out. Um, the Train product has been continued to be phenomenal in terms of just working through it on a daily basis. I mean, I tend to lean more towards very few carbs because I've got a bit of an abundance problem, right? So if I have some, I'll probably overconsume and have too much, and then I'll feel like crap for at least a couple hours, if not a couple of
Right.
days. So I usually tend to lean on the low side of it, but it's having that in there has been great in the full distance races. Adding in the extra carbs from Race Plus has been exactly what I needed. I think I tend to burn a little more heavy on the carb side. I've been looking for a way to do lab testing in and around us, but I haven't been able to land a place that has been willing to commit to it. There's a local college here that does it occasionally, but they were shut down because of the pandemic, and they continue to have issues with their lab. So it's just been a pain, but it's something that's on my list to try to figure out what that fat max looks like.
I was thinking that you go in there and tell them you're a Wolverine and they just ask you not to come in.
No, they don't have sports down here at it's Florida Gulf Coast University, but yeah, I think up in Gainesville they've got something, but that's a several-hour drive.
Yeah.
So we'd have to figure that out. But yeah, so I mean, but I mean, every I kind of alluded to it. Every race I do, Mother Nature likes to throw a curveball. I mean, I've been in some of the worst races. 2014 Ironman Florida, canceled swim, 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts, 40-something degrees. The day before was perfect and 71. This is November in Florida, so in the Panhandle, no less. So you never know what you're going to get.
Right, true.
I've been in was it Ironman Chattanooga in 2018, which I think at the time was the third hottest race they've had on record. So the heat index was 112 degrees that day. And then last year, Maryland, Chattanooga, and Texas, all hot. This is September, October. There's no surprise there. But each one had different conditions in terms of wind and or sun. And Maryland, we had a massive jellyfish problem, which getting stung several times despite being able to wear a full-length wetsuit. They actually made a phenomenal decision to let us wear wetsuits above the wetsuit legal temperature in order to protect our skin, essentially. But I still got stung quite a bit. Did have some GI issues, and I'm thinking, man, why am I having this again? Because I used to have it a lot, and some of the research I was doing would suggest that jellyfish stings can create that problem. But Maryland was hot. Chattanooga was normally hot. Texas is always hot and windy. So each race throws an interesting curveball at you, and with the weather conditions and everything, we're trying to figure it out. I think we're getting closer. St. George was the first year. This past May was the first time I've been able to to use the gel.
Mm-hmm.
So that was interesting. Kind of took me back to the days that I couldn't stand dealing with goo packets. I mean, I'd never been able to really process the concentrate anyway. Anytime I tried to do any sort of concentrated bottle, I end up with stomach issues.
Right.
It's just kind of the way it is, I guess. So those are things that I continue to learn. But yeah, I mean, it's just it's a fun process. I mean, what I love about SFuels, and you said it, I mean, the last 18 months, the amount of products that we've put out has been remarkable. I mean, even the Keto 3, the cereal, right?
Right.
That's been great. I mean, because I was the crazy kid that used to eat grape nuts. I mean, I don't necessarily need the prize inside. I was looking for sustenance, for substance. So, and I like yogurt. So for me, that's the perfect breakfast, especially on like race day.
Mm-hmm.
Yogurt and some Keto 3, even the night before. In some cases, I'll do extra of that, because it's something I know, and I can control the situation, right? Because I've had other issues where the night before I'll get carry out and something won't sit right. They cooked it wrong, or especially when you're traveling for all these races, that's problematic. But having this fueling to be able to put it all together and know for sure what's in it and where it's coming from has been great.
Puts the control back into your hands. It allows you to
Yeah,
make the decisions and you control the narrative at that point. Because, like you
yeah,
said earlier, even sometimes when something's cooked in a particular oil or some particular just cooking substance, you're going to get it that night before a race, and that's the last time that you want to introduce something at that point. So it allows you to kind of control the narrative. And like you said, I think the more races that you definitely have coming ahead of you, the opportunity to implement the Race Plus
yeah,
gel, you might even find that is able to be used on the bike rather than
yeah,
how we just thought as it came out. Maybe this is just a run product. What we're
yeah.
finding out more and more athletes, and especially my athletes, were utilizing that on the bike in a more frequent scenario, and it's really having some really phenomenal outcomes in that case. So it's as these products continue to come out and we get more time with them, we're all going to find some very interesting ways to maximize not just our nutritional kind of daily aspect, but we'll end up finding some definite benefits from the race aspect as well.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I can't handle the concentrated bottles. So that means for me, I've got a lot of bottles that I'm carting around.
Oh yeah.
If I look at my fueling strategy from St. George, I had a bottle, a train, and so I started um, uh, keeping the sport tops because I've gone to some Ironman races in like a 5 mile radius around. You can't find a water bottle with a sport top because they sell out. So I've been keeping those. I have like a bag of them in my travel bag, like 12 of them just in case. But so I had a bottle of train before the swim. The bike strategy was 3 scoops of Race Plus per bottle per hour, which means I had 3 on my bike. I have a specialized shiv, so I've got the internal fuel silage, which I just put water in there because it's impossible to clean that otherwise. So I've got a 2 cage behind my seat and a cage in my aero bar, which means then I need 3 other bottles in a special needs bag. So I freeze those the night before, and by the time I get to them, they're not overly cooked.
Right.
But it's a lot to deal with, setting those up. And then so if there's an ability to process the gel instead of having to do, because I tried initially like basically dumping an entire thing of Race Plus into one bottle as a concentrate, and I, no matter what I do to water it down, I can't process it correctly. Yeah, so then I did on the run. I had 1 bottle of in my race gear bag, run gear bag. I had a bottle of Race Plus, so I just walked out with that bottle, and I used that later. I was having them fill it up at the aid stations for me, so I could use that instead of having to deal with the tiny little Dixie cup.
Right.
Because especially with water, you need something to spray on you, especially in the conditions we had in St. George that were so dry.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be soaked leaving an aid station, and half a mile down the road, you're bone dry, and so it's a weird condition for someone that lives in Florida.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, and then I had it was 2x2 scoops of gel in each bullet. I had 4 bullets, so I left 2 in a special needs bag, which those were cooked. I mean that hot gel is not the greatest thing to put in your body, but from a taste and consistency perspective, so that's something I'm sure we can work through. But I'll tell you, it's better than the alternative, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And I find that, especially with the aspects that you talked about from a caloric standpoint, with the extra kick when you need it later in the run, having that additional, I mean, really per serving, you're talking about an additional 8, depending on which Race Plus product you're talking about, an additional 8 grams of carbohydrates of that highly branched cyclic dextrin in the Race Plus gel goes a long way. It absorbs really, really well, moves through the gut really easily. So I can see how your race plan there, you were talking about earlier before we got on camera, how you were just that entire race through the run, you had big smile on your face, and it was just a great experience for you.
Yeah, it was one of the first races where fueling was not an issue. The issues I did have were not based on fueling. We could say that. Yeah, it's I was one of the lucky all world athletes, silver AWA, that got a roll down because they weren't able to fill it with qualifiers. They rolled it down to, I think, it was like the super ambassadors, so the people that had done like more than 20 races before. And then they rolled it to gold and then silver, and it sold out a couple days after I got the invitation. But the finish line at Ironman Texas last year was my 12th for my legacy slot. So I applied, got approved, and then I get this email from Ironman 9 weeks from race day in St. George, right? And of course, immediately I'm like, no, why would I go race in St. George? I've done this for Kona. So I replied back, and I'm like, hey, does this disqualify me from? Does this count as my Kona slot? And the fastest email I've ever got back from Ironman was like 37 seconds, and the response from them was no. Matter of fact, this will count as your validation race for this year if you want to. So that's when I had to make that decision. And I was talking to my wife. I was showing her pictures of the course. I'm like, hey, you want to go here? I didn't even tell her where it was. And she's like, yeah, that's gorgeous. Let's go.
Yeah.
So signed up and started basically the pseudo couch to Ironman 9-week program, jumped right in. I actually had to, so I use a different training system. And I had to email the customer service people. And I'm like, hey, I need you to add this race as an A race to my calendar because the system wouldn't let me do it because it was too close. So
you must be wrong.
Yeah, but I've been using them since 2013. She knows me very well. She's like, yeah, okay. So I went into that race knowing full well that I wasn't going to set any times. Didn't really care, frankly. I was there to enjoy the process and enjoy the journey and enjoy the fact that it was a world championship race, which outside of my Kona slot, I didn't think I'd ever get to. And so that whole race, I mean, my mindset, my thought process was, we'll get there eventually. Let's just enjoy the moment. And the swim was great. I mean, it was absolutely freezing 3 days before the race. Put my face in the water. I mean, I'm a Florida boy now, and that water was freaking cold. Took your breath away. The first time we jumped in, I mean, that's when I saw you guys on, I think it was Wednesday.
Yeah. And
that was tough. So of course I'm thinking, how the heck are we going to get through this? But luckily the water warmed up. Probably the cleanest water I've ever swam in, having done Florida and Louisville and Maryland and that inland lake in Haines City. There's been some nasty bodies of water I've been in. The Chattanooga, the Tennessee River is not great. in Chattanooga. The Ohio River in Louisville is absolutely awful.
Yep.
You come out of there and your kit turns colors. So, but yeah, that was phenomenal. The bike, easily the toughest bike course I think they've ever put together. I mean, 7,200 plus speed of ascent. Yeah, I maxed out at I think 49.1 miles an hour in the first loop around the reservoir, and it was on a downhill there. And so it's just a situation of knowing full well you need to ride defensively. I saw quite a few people get taken out by other people. So it was one of those situations where I enjoyed the process. I mean, I saw cows wandering across the street down in Gunlock and in the Indian reservation out there. I saw the sign, the Inuit Indians are welcome Ironman athletes. I'm thinking, this is amazing. I mean, the crowds are out. Even the cows came out to cheer us on. Working my way up through the Gunlock climb, and then of course coming back down from that area was by Vivo's, the pie place.
Yeah.
That was dicey. I mean, we're going downhill very, very quickly. That's when the wind started picking up, very gusty winds. I had a teammate from here in South Florida that got blown off her bike. So she ended up, they took her to the emergency clinic, and fortunately nothing was broken, but she was pretty banged up. That took her out. So yeah, I mean, just being defensive and enjoying the process. There was some situations, I think it was when we were climbing Snow Canyon, I was looking around and, I could see people just like suffering, like this is the worst thing ever. You could just see it on their face. Like they just felt so defeated. And I just looked over and I'm thinking, hey, just look around. This is like the most beautiful thing you've ever ridden a bike through. Think about that and enjoy that. And like immediately the look on the guy's face was like, yeah, you're right. I'm not going to win anything. I mean, we were 6.5 hours, I think, into the bike course at that point. I mean, it was a slog, but it was amazing. Absolutely gorgeous. Every point on that course has something that is absolutely amazing and beautiful to look at. So that was my mentality going into that. And then on the run, not any sort of PR by any stretch of the imagination, but certainly wasn't wasn't the slowest. But I mean, I had a conversation with Tim Dunn while we were out there. I got to talk to Sarah True, Julie Dibbins. I met her on course. I mean, so yeah, I had great conversations with other athletes and just kept working through the process. I mean, I met some folks that drove 3.5 hours from upstate Utah to just come spectate.
Oh, that's awesome.
Like, we heard about it and we wanted to come see it. Like, well, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And and the finish line was that. I mean, that was something else. But it was kind of an appetizer for what we're going to get in October 2023 in Kona. But yeah, it's been absolutely remarkable. I'm getting a chance to meet you guys in person. I mean, I've been on the team for I think 3 years now, and I hadn't met Leighton in person. So everything's been virtual, digital, right? So that was awesome. Great experience.
Well, and it was wonderful to meet you, and you are such an amazing ambassador of the sport and also our product. So we 100% thank you for that. But again, in addition to that, just being an ambassador for healthy lifestyles and getting people to just recognize, hey, a change needs to be made.
Yeah.
It starts with one step. It starts with one decision, and you making that decision back in 2007 has sent you on a pathway to be an ambassador of just living life to your fullest. And I think that that's an amazing story. I'm super excited that we were able to give you the platform to really give this story, and hopefully maybe it changes maybe it changes 10, 15 people's lives. That's what we're shooting for in this process. So Dan, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule. outside of Kona next year, where might people find you?
So I'll be in Panama City Beach this year. So I pre-signed up for Ironman Florida. After finishing St. George, I was considering pushing that out to 2023, and then I got the bid to Kona. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, even though it technically doesn't count for anything other than just another notch on the scoreboard. And then I do have to do a 70.3 next year to fully validate the Kona slot. So I'll be back in Panama City Beach again for Ironman 70.3 Gulf Coast in May, and then all roads point to Kailua Kona. So we'll be trying to figure out how to afford that trip with my wife and 2 daughters. We're going to go out early. I think we're planning on 11 days out there. I made the mistake of flying back from St. George the day after the race. On a red eye, no less. So let's just say it took me
Rookie move.
about 4 days to get back to any sort of normalcy. Of course, the scheduling of that race was a nightmare. I was up at 1:45 in the morning to catch the bus at 3 something to get out to the swim. So that whole thing was a logistics challenge, to say the least. But yeah, so we're gonna go out early, try to acclimate to the 7-hour time zone difference, and then I think we'll stay 2 days later. I think we're coming back on Tuesday.
Perfect.
So, get a chance to watch the women race on Thursday, which would be fantastic, and then we'll get going on Saturday. See what happens.
Well, that's exciting stuff, and I know everybody tune in, watch Dan, make sure that we stay up to date with what's going on, and hopefully we'll be able to connect soon and maybe have you on again.
Yeah, you guys are going to be in Kona this year. I'm jealous. I'd love to be there with you, but certainly not in the cards this year. But yeah, we'll see you for sure in 2023.
Absolutely, looking forward to it. And again, Dan, thank you for sharing your story.
Appreciate it.
Everybody, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Monday Mindshare. And remember, let's go longer.